Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Spitzy. I am a career advisor for our graduate students in the greater Washington, D.C. metro area and our virtual graduate Hokies. And I'd like to thank you for accessing this PowerPoint on how graduate students can get the most out of a career fair, whether it is an in-person career fair or a virtual one. So with that, I'm going to pop my video off and we'll go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, what I'd like to talk about today are a couple of the most important aspects to a career fair. We're going to go over the dates of the career and professional development career fairs that are coming up this spring, general expectations, purpose of a career fair, both from an employer standpoint and a student standpoint, and of course, how to navigate, which includes how to prep, how to navigate during the actual career fair, and then what follow-up could potentially look like. So first and foremost, let's go over what career fairs we, the Career and Professional Development Office, are putting on this spring. We have Spring 2023 Connection Fairs, one in person coming up February 15th from 10 a.m. to 4 in the Commonwealth Ballroom, the Squire Student Center. To register for this particular career fair, all you need to do is log into Handshake and click Join Event. Super easy. And then our virtual Spring Connection Fair is February 21st, again from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And by the way, this is Eastern Standard Time. You can find all the information again on Handshake, and then on Handshake, you'll be directed to the actual registration link. And we use the platform Brazen to put on our career fairs, and there is a wonderful student resources page that you can find when you log into Handshake. In that section on the information on the career fair, there's a student resources link that you can click on how to use and navigate the platform. It's really easy. So let's look at why employers attend a career fair. I know this one might seem a little bit obvious, but it dives down a little bit deeper than just attracting students. But of course, they're here to attract this top-notch talent, which is you. They're here also to advertise who they are and to really increase their visibility. This is particularly true for those employers who decide to attend a career fair, even though they're not actively hiring. And that can be true. So that, I think, is not necessarily a hugely intuitive reason why employers attend, but this really is a great way for them to showcase who they are, what they're all about, and begin to kind of build a pipeline, even if they're not currently hiring. They're also attending to screen out potential candidates, which is why it's really important that you really pay attention to how you're coming across in that first impression. And of course, we're going to talk all about that. And why do students attend? I think one of the biggest reasons that I hear from students, regardless of undergraduate or graduate, is I want to get a job. And of course that makes sense, or an internship. But if we look at kind of, no one's really walking out of the career fair with a job, but it's a great first step in making that contact with a desired employer, learning more about a particular employer or employers, that also getting invited to interview or apply. That's a big thing, right? So that's probably the most equivalent to kind of, quote unquote, walking out with a job. What could happen in a career fair is you walk out with an interview or an invitation to apply for a position. It's also a great opportunity to practice networking skills. And so one of the things that we'll talk about, but I want to mention here, is that even if nobody is attending the fair, that's a huge interest to you. Employers who are coming sound good, but they're not exactly who you're hoping to meet. It's still a good opportunity to practice meeting people, to practice talking about who you are, the value that you bring to the table, ask them questions, engage. You never know. They could know someone in a different company that they think, oh, okay, yeah, I met with Carrie. I think she'd be great for this particular position. I just happen to know this person in my own network. You just never know. So it's a great opportunity to use that for networking skills. And then lastly, kind of already mentioned this, but learning more about a particular opportunity. If you have questions, maybe you're unsure whether or not you want to apply, you have questions, and this is a great chance for you to be able to interact and ask those questions in real time. I want to go over some career fair myths and realities. The first myth here is that, all I really need to do is show up on the day of the event. Everything else will take care of itself. And the reality here is that preparation before actually attending the career fair, whether it's in person or virtual, is actually pretty critical. First and foremost, it's absolutely vital that you look at who is going to be attending. Look at the employers who have signed up to attend. It not only helps you to prioritize the contacts that you want to make, it also allows you to focus in your research and create some targeted questions based on the people or the organizations that you want to talk to. Employers also expect students to come in having done that research. They are looking for people who are focused and well prepared. So that includes having a working knowledge of the open positions that they have, and you can look at all of this when you go into Handshake to see the employers who are attending, who they're hiring for. You can actually filter down to see, are they hiring for grad students? Are they hiring for certain kinds of majors? What positions are available right now? You want to look at what does the company do and any kind of major accomplishments. Have they been in the news recently? Have they been posting to their LinkedIn company page with any incredible, innovations or news stories? So you want to have that going in. And so students who don't do any of this will oftentimes kind of come into the career fair and not necessarily feel as targeted. So you have all this great lead up time, all this wonderful runway time to do that kind of research. Myth number 2, I'll be okay, jeans, Virginia Tech sweatshirt, should be all good. So the reality here is that business professional, at a minimum, business casual, is really the way to go here. We're talking about making that good, solid first impression. So you want to think about that not only for in-person, but also with virtual. Now with virtual, the benefit is a lot of times you might be able to get away with just going sort of top, right? You don't necessarily have to worry about bottoms unless for any reason you feel like you're going to be standing or look at being seen in full camera. So you can fudge it a little bit, but you really want to make sure that you're sort of presenting your best foot forward. It does contribute to that first impression. If you're unsure what business professional looks like or business casual, do a Google search. There are plenty of images out there that will help to showcase what that actually means. Basically, it's button down. It could be blazer. It could be tie. It doesn't have to be, but there are some really good images and points of reference if you're unsure what that looks like. Myth number 3, I should really only go to the fair if I'm looking for a full-time job or even an internship. So the reality here, as I mentioned earlier, not everybody who's coming is going to have current openings, but they are still pipelining. They are there to scout talent as well as to gain some visibility. So they do attract people to their company. So those good impressions that you're making, plus any kind of follow-up as you're talking to someone, grabbing their business card or connecting on LinkedIn and reaching out to them a little bit later on. And this is follow-up, so we'll be talking about it, but really helps you to kind of get a place in their world, be on their radar. And doing this kind of thing helps you to build advocates. So if it's a company that you're really interested in, or even have a passing interest in, and you connect really well with the people who are there, maybe they're not hiring right then and there, but you guys connect, you do a couple, of follow-ups, and then once they have a position that's available, they'd be more likely to reach out to you and let you know because they know who you are, and you've established good credibility, you've built an advocate. And again, of course, it's a great networking opportunity. Myth number 4, again, kind of, talked a little bit about this earlier. You might receive a job offer during the career fair or an internship offer. Fairs only set the stage for interviews. It's really just an opportunity to establish those first introductions and interest in the company. It's a chance for you to give your pitch. It's a chance for you to just really, connect with whoever is representing that company. Hiring is definitely a process, and most of you probably already know this. This is, nothing earth-shattering to hear, but it's a process which can take time, whether that's weeks to months. So that one-on-one preliminary screening interview, whether that's virtual or in person or telephone, oftentimes then leads itself to at least one on-site interview at the organization, sometimes even more. So depending on what kind of position you're going in and how that employer has their hiring structure set up, you could be looking at a series of maybe 4 to 5 interviews, maybe a little less, but it is something that does take more than just coming to a career fair. But you're making really, really good, solid impressions by going. And lastly, myth number 5, career fairs are for undergraduates only. So I really can't stress this enough because I think that's probably one of the more prevalent myths that are in every college and university. But companies are there to seek talent. Most are open to not only seniors who are graduating with their bachelor's degree, but graduate students. So when preparing this presentation, and these numbers may have gone up since I prepared this, but 52 out of 100 employers who are coming to our in-person career fair on the 15th are seeking grad students, and 43 out of 68 employers who are attending the virtual on the 21st are seeking grad students. So are they seeking them exclusively? No, but they are open to master's prepared students. So this is absolutely an opportunity for you. It is not just for undergrads. So let's kind of shift into preparing for the career fair. We've talked so far about kind of purpose, expectations, myths, and realities. How do we prep? So there's a couple of steps that we're going to take a little bit more in depth, but this is an overview. So before you're attending, I think it's important to really clarify what your particular goals are, research those employers that are attending so you can prioritize your contact list and really develop those questions, polish your resume and your LinkedIn profile, choose your wardrobe, and then prepare and practice your pitch. And again, we're going to go over all of these a little bit more in depth. So in terms of clarifying your career goals, what does that mean? There are some questions I think that could be helpful to ask yourself as you're pulling this together. First and foremost, what's your motivation for attending? What are you hoping to achieve? What is the accomplishment that you want to reach as a result? What steps are going to help you get there? So if you're looking to meet with 3 organizations in order to get more information on how to apply and maybe even get invited for an interview, that's going to kind of help you understand the steps that you might want to take or prepare for so you can reach that goal. I mentioned this before, but it's, I think, always sort of worth coming back to. Recruiters really aren't that interested in students who are there to take anything. I'm looking for a job. I just really need a job. I really need an internship. That turns them off because what they are there to do is hire for their position. Ultimately, they want to invite people to apply. They want to interview people who are interested in them and their position. So someone who's kind of a little bit unsure of what they want to do or feeling kind of, desperate, we've all been there where we feel like, I just need something. We want to spin that narrative, and we really want to come across as though we do have a particular goal in mind, okay? So that's why we really want to do a little bit of thinking beforehand. What are we looking for? And why are we looking for that particular opportunity or that particular goal? Secondly, we want to research organizations. I really can't stress this enough. Look at Handshake for those people who are coming and any details that they have. Again, you can actually see, you can filter on the majors that they're looking at. the school year, which would include masters, to really get a sense of what are they, who are they trying to attract? And also, what positions, if any, are available right now? You can always apply to those positions before the career fair. And then when you're talking to the representatives, let them know, I saw XYZ position, available. I went ahead and applied, but really just wanted to come over and introduce myself and get your take on a few things about the company, right? So you can let them know your interest by having already applied. Investigate the issues, trends, industry outlook of your professions of interest. This is another way to go. It may not necessarily be employer specific, but it might be industry specific. So if you're kind of looking into sort of the natural resources industry, maybe do a little bit of looking around to see what areas in sustainability are hot right now. What's the biggest trend happening in this huge industry of sustainability? You might want to look at trade publications, professional association websites, ONET, which is a really interesting source to kind of give you an industry outlook. ONET, you can look up you can look up roles and industries and get a sense of, do they have what they call a bright outlook? And how quickly is that industry going to grow in the next number of years? So it's a great place to kind of just do some preliminary 30,000-foot view research. Next, based on the employers that you want to contact or be in contact with, how do you, then prioritizing and preparing your questions. This maximizes your time. I think it helps people feel more empowered because you're walking in knowing the kinds of questions that you want to ask. There's a little bit of a structure there that you can anchor down into. With being at a virtual fair, how this looks, you can virtually stand in line with multiple companies at one time, which is kind of cool. So at an in-person, you have to kind of stand in line and make your moves around the room. With virtual, if there are 10 employers that you want to know or that you want to speak with, you can wait in 10 different lines. And then the first available employer in those 10 lines will pull you in. So you can really maximize your time. And what I would do here is avoid any questions easily found online. The biggest, I think, culprit here is what positions are available. That stuff is easily found way before attending. So you want to maximize your time in your impression building with the representatives who are going to be at the fair, again, whether it's in person or virtual, and really make those questions count. So what does it mean to ask good questions? There's a couple of ways you could approach this. You could look at company culture. And an example of that would be, how do you and your team celebrate successes? This is not anything that you would typically find online. And the benefit here of asking this type of question to a representative is it asks them to draw on their own experience. It engages them. Think about when someone asks you a question that really requires you to reflect and come up with a personal experience. It's much more fun, right? It's just a much more fun experience on both the receiver and the asker. You could dive deeper into the position. So maybe that question looks like, how does this opportunity fit into the organization? What does success look like? So for internships, first week, month, semester, what does success look like at the first week? In a month, in a semester, full time? What does it look like in 30, 90, 365? And then lastly, personal experience. This one tends to be kind of fun to ask. What's something you're proud of from the past 1 or 2 years? Another way to go is, what's been the most surprising thing about working with your company, right? So it really kind of has them be able to draw on their personal experience. And these are not questions that they're going to get all day. The kinds of questions that they're typically going to get all day is, what positions do you have available? What is it that you do? And, let's be honest, those are boring questions to ask or to have to answer all day long. So you're coming along, you're asking good questions, they're going to remember you. They are absolutely going to remember you, and that's a great first impression. Of course, you want to polish your resume before going. I always like to caveat this a little bit. I hesitate I always hesitate to put this in a presentation because it makes it, I don't want it to come across as us saying to anyone, your resume has to be perfect and that your success at a career fair is going to be based on a piece of paper. Quite the opposite. I'm going to go to that last point on the slide. Your conversation is much more likely to have more weight than a piece of paper. Okay, so I really want you to, first of all, know there's no magical formula. There is no such thing as a perfect resume. What you want to think about here are, making it clear, concise, reader-friendly, error-free. When you go in person, sure, it's okay to bring multiple copies printed on some really good quality paper, and only give your resume if they ask it. This is a chance to talk to people, not to have them just look at you with a piece of paper. Anecdote. This did not happen at Virginia Tech. This happened at another university where I was attending one of the in-person career fairs. And I happened to see a student walk up to an employer booth, and the student laid down their resume, didn't say a word, and walked away. And that is the exact opposite of how we want any student to feel in this situation. Again, your conversation's much more likely to have more weight than a piece of paper. If you think about it, that let's say we have 600 students coming to the career fair in person. That's 600 pieces of paper. How in the world are those employers going to be able to remember, right? So they're going to think about, what contacts did I make? Who stood out? And who stood out is not always going to be, and quite frankly, very rarely going to be noted on a piece of paper. When you're virtual, you can have both a doc version and a PDF ready. Again, if you're asked, don't lead with a resume. And then think about tailoring your resume to the industry as best you can if you're meeting with multiple employers. If you're meeting with just one and they have a position available, then what I would recommend that you do is you tailor your resume to that particular position. And tailoring your resume to the job is always probably the number one piece of advice that any of us are going to be able to give. It is probably the best practice in our lexicon of best practices. If you're meeting with multiple employers, just do the best you can. Nobody's expecting you, again, to have a perfect resume. When you go to an in-person fair, a lot of times you have a shortened version of your resume. You might just do a one page. Now, what I tell people, especially my grad students, a lot of times you all have more experience than an undergrad. So it's okay to go to 2 pages. If you bring that to a career fair, just print on front and back. So it's still just 1 page, just a little bit of a tip. Of course, you want to choose your wardrobe. Again, business professional, at minimum business casual. If you're going in person, bring something along to help you kind of keep everything organized. There is such a thing called a Padfolio. If you're not sure what that looks like, just literally Google it, Padfolio. A pen, maybe blank paper, something to help you remember, especially if you're having conversations as you consider your follow-up. You're going to want to reference maybe something that you said or they said in the conversation. So writing that down in the moment helps you to remember. And then lastly, just avoid overuse of any strong smelling colognes or perfumes. You just never know who has a sensitivity, and especially in person. Virtual, it doesn't matter, but when you're in person, with so many people in a room, that can be very overwhelming for people who have a sensitivity. Okay, so now we're moving into the pitch, the elevator pitch. I have a little bit of a different take on this, and I'm going to showcase an example in the next slide. But the first element, of course, is to introduce yourself. What I like about this particular graphic, it's a meet and greet. So name plus a quick small talk. What this does is it helps it actually become more of a conversation rather than this memorized speech, which never comes across well. It just doesn't, because you're not doing it asynchronously, right? You're talking to someone, and if someone comes up to you and they give you this, "Hi, my name is Gary. I'm a senior in da 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 da," or "I'm a master's student in natural resources, and these are my skills, and this is what I'm looking for." right? That it's not organic, and it kind of puts the other person like, oh, wow, okay, what was that? But if you invite them for a conversation a little bit, even just a quick, how's your day going so far? That breaks the ice, and I think it helps propel you further ahead. A little bit of information around, what your field of study is, where you are in your program, what you're searching for, whether it's internship, full-time job, and when that's going to be happening for you. Quick overview of whatever is applicable to the position that you're going for and any kind of accomplishments that you have. Again, in relevance to the position. You could also include there maybe some current updates or general information about the company. What are you working on? What do you know about the company? How can you bring that forward? Maybe you just saw that they posted on LinkedIn this incredible new project. So you could mention that. Oh, by the way, I also saw that you guys just came out with XYZ. That looks really amazing. And then end with a call to action, which is usually a question. And that encourages conversation. It keeps the engagement moving forward. So what does that look like? Well, let me give you a sample. Hi, my name is Jane Hokie, and I'm a first-year Master of Engineering student studying aerospace engineering. How's your day going so far? I've really been looking forward to talking with you as I've been following your company for a while. Your work to maximize operational efficiency using clean energy is cutting edge and very much in line actually with my area of interest. I've taken a few courses in flight systems and design, as well as the intersection of natural resources and technology, and I'm currently working on a project for a local company to evaluate clean energy solutions for small fixed-wing aircraft. I'm going to be graduating in May and very interested in the full-time systems engineer role at your company. I'm curious if you could tell me more about the scope of the position and what your ideal candidate would look like. So what that does, and you'll notice I went a little bit off script because I didn't want it to sound super memorized. And of course it did sound super memorized. I'm reading it from a slide, but hopefully you get the gist here. It's not a robot cookie cutter kind of thing. I've prepared that pitch specific to that particular employer because that employer is doing something that if I ever were in the MEng program studying aerospace engineering, which I do not have the capability to do that, but how cool for people who can, I had tailored that pitch to that employer. So if I were then going to be talking to someone in a natural resources company, I would probably spin it a little bit differently. Maybe not a ton differently, but I might change it up a little bit to be more tailored to that. So please, 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 if you take nothing else from our discussion on pitch, don't feel like you have to memorize a script. It will not come over well, will not come across well. But you also want to have some bullet points that you feel anchored in. So you know that whoever you're talking to, you mention your name, you mention, you ask them, really quick, how's your day going so far? Or how's your career fair experience been so far today? And then kind of letting them know where you are in your program, what you're studying, skills, any, particular passion or interest you have in that company and what they're doing, when you're graduating, what you're looking for, and then ending it with that call to action. So I think that's sort of a nice compact way to think about it. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so now we're looking at during the career fair. So first and foremost, and this is actually the only slide I have in this, it's all about presentation. It's speaking clearly, it's speaking concisely. It's if you're in a virtual, using the chat box and making sure that you're paying attention to text length, using correct grammar, using correct punctuation. I know it's so easy in chat boxes to kind of text type, but we want to be, remember, we're first impressioning, so we want to be as professional in our correspondence as possible, providing complete and targeted answers. So again, that kind of speaks to really understanding your why and knowing why you are talking to that employer. What about that employer is really of interest to you? So instead of if they ask you a question, oh yeah, well, I'm really just kind of looking for a full-time job, something that's going to help me put into play my skills and yada, yada, yada. That's a little vague. So you want to target that answer specific to them, to the position or potential positions that they might be offering. It goes without saying, of course, we want to be honest. A quick rule of thumb here, anything you put on your resume is always fair game. So if they ask you for your resume and they're looking at it and they're asking you questions about what's on your resume, know that you may be asked to talk about that a little bit. But it's okay to be honest. Let me say, no one is expecting the perfect candidate for anything. So if they are searching for people to ask to apply, everybody is not going to be have every single requirement and qualification. What matters most to a lot of organizations is, yes, can you do the job, but also, is it good to talk to you, right? You know, is this person someone I could see bringing into my team? So that leads us nicely into that last point: show interest, energy, enthusiasm. Good eye contact is great. If you're virtual, try to avoid any kind of distracting things like, you know, swiveling if you're in a swivel chair. Try not to swivel, you know, or look all the way around. Try to maintain as much eye contact virtually as you can. And it's okay, you know, if your camera is at the bottom of the screen, you can look in the middle of the screen, right? It's not that big of a deal. I think what they're really looking for is someone who can maintain considered eye contact, right? So those presentation skills can be really, really helpful. And then after the fair, we want to follow up. So every employer has potentially different procedures for interacting with attendees. So what could be useful here is asking everybody that you meet with, what's the best way to follow up with you? And it's real quick, real simple. And they might say, well, you know, just apply online. Or they might say, well, if you're going to apply, let me know first so I can be aware of when your application comes through. And they might say, you know, however, whatever makes sense for you, and that's fine. But you want to ask what their preference is. You can also ask to connect on LinkedIn or grab a business card. LinkedIn could be a really quick and easy way to do it that you could do right then and there. Some people may just have, you know, they might be more old-fashioned and have business cards, whatever makes the most sense. If you are going to be sending, you know, a brief note and follow-up, you can certainly send that in an email, but I would detail a specific part of your conversation so it's not general and it's not vague. So it helps them remember you, and it also helps you remember them, believe it or not. So if you're meeting with multiple people, having, you know, remembering some of that specificity can be really useful to you. Remember that every single piece of correspondence that we send is a work sample. So take the necessary time to make it professional, to be error-free, to be clear, to use correct punctuation. And then lastly, be timely with the follow-up. It really does demonstrate how serious you are, how motivated you are, what that genuine level of interest is. It doesn't have to be a very long follow-up. You know, it could be a couple of sentences, but the very fact that you're doing it is very, very professional. It really looks good. And it helps, again, it helps the employer remember who you are. So if you have any questions, you want to talk about any of these in greater detail, please feel free to reach out to us at Career and Professional Development. You can also look at our website, career.vt.edu, and to make an appointment with a career advisor, just log into Handshake, go to Career Center, click on Appointments, and then follow the prompts. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful time at the fair.